Today for our daily cancellation, we will respond to a video from a YouTuber named Professor Dave of the channel Professor Dave Explains, where presumably Professor Dave explains things. The channel has an impressive 2 million subscribers, and this video was sent to me by several people promising that it contains a formidable argument against my position on gender ideology. One person, in fact, says that Professor Dave debunks my movie, What is a Woman? And I'm quite interested to see that, so let's go through this together.
Now, I'm not going to do too much talking, but what I will say is this. How do you debunk what he was doing? All he was doing was asking a question that no one can answer. No one can answer but his wife. His wife was the only one who answered the question properly. That didn't seem weird? Okay, so now we have someone who's a huge YouTuber, 2 million subscribers. God dang it, he's a huge YouTuber, and he's a professor. So, hey, let's see what happens.
Everybody seems to be furious about trans people. Half of us are furious that they exist, and the other half are furious about what the other half is saying. I would like to jump in and see if I can clear up some of the ways that people are talking past each other. Now, it's no secret that I'm a bit on the liberal side, but rest assured the left is not going to get away scot-free on this one. They're missing the mark on a few key points. But as tends to be the case, it's bigots on the right who are the main problem, so let's start there.
We're off to a rough start. Putting aside Dave's smug, know-it-all tone and demeanor, something that seems to be a matter of instinct for people like him, so I'm not going to hold it against him. The real problem is that in the...
Wow, you know, Matt Walsh is he's not holding back any punches because he says that he called him smug off top. But my man, Professor Dave, he said that he leans left. And he said the left is not going to get off scot-free, but the main issue is the people on the right. You all, the people on the right, are the problem. Because y'all won't just let them define women the way they want to define women. That's what the problem is.
There's something that seems to be a matter of instinct for people like him, so I'm not going to hold it against him. The real problem is that in the very first sentence, he's already wildly and intentionally mischaracterizing his opponents. In 30 seconds, he gives us a straw man and an ad hominem. He's doing that in the first 30 seconds. He's beginning this way, which signals that he doesn't have much to offer beyond this point. Because if he actually planned on making a compelling argument, he wouldn't come out of the gate breezily dismissing millions of people as bigots. Sorry, not millions, billions. Because anybody who has a problem with basic concepts of gender ideology is a bigot, he says, which means that almost everybody in the world and who has ever existed in the world is a bigot. Professor Dave begins the proceedings with that declaration. He also lies about the nature of the opposing argument, and he does it in the laziest and frankly dumbest way imaginable. He says that the people on the other side are furious that trans people exist. Now, in reality, as he's well aware, we're not furious that trans people exist, but rather we deny the underlying premise of gender ideology. If we're furious about anything, it's that this ideology is being imposed on society, and especially on children, and it's causing great harm in the process. By saying that we're furious that trans people exist, he gets to dismiss all of us as a bunch of angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns, when he is also quite well aware that when it comes to this subject, nearly all of the angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns are on the other side of the discussion.
Now, before he goes forward, I just want to say this too. When we saw the movie, when we watched the movie together, me and my supporters, What is a Woman? The only people that were getting upset was everyone on the opposite side. And even if they started the conversation with huge smiles on their faces, huge smiles, they were welcoming. They thought that this was going to be one of those type of exposés where they can just happily talk about all the wonderful things on their side, in their community. And you know what? Matt Walsh let them talk. He let them say whatever they wanted to say. But then when he asked the questions, certain questions, they got pissed. They got pissed when he used a word like truth. People were ready to get up and leave the interviews. That's ridiculous. That's very negative. That starts wars, man. Not real wars, but I'm talking about this. It doesn't help.
Nearly all of the angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns are on the other side of the discussion. Take, for example, the people threatening to kill me and accusing me of genocide for making a documentary where I am only visibly angry one time briefly when addressing a school board that covered up the rape of a student, so perhaps you'll excuse my emotions in that case. But the other point of this mischaracterization is to pretend that we're angry at trans people personally rather than critical of the claims made by trans activists. Overall, it's a mess, and we're only 30 seconds in. Let's continue.
The primary issue is people who deny transgenderism. These are the people who spew the tired Fox News talking points. Liberals say there are 89 genders and anyone can identify as a hamster, that sort of thing. It's a deliberate caricature of reality peddled by all the angry conservative dudes popping up in my feed lately who claim that nobody can define a woman.
The angry conservative dudes. They show Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, and Matt.
Let's all take a moment to acknowledge the problems that go along with the ambiguity of language. Sex and gender are different words that refer to different things. If you did not know that, now you do.
So we have another common rhetorical tactic from the left, and honestly, I'm quite disappointed to hear common rhetorical tactics when I was promised an utter destruction of my worldview, and I was looking forward to it. Professor Dave says it's a tired Fox News talking point that there are a lot of genders. But that's not Fox's talking point, that's his talking point. This is indeed the official position of the gender ideologue. They may disagree on how many genders, but they all agree that there are a lot more than 2. Some say there are infinite numbers. Facebook says there are 58. If this sounds insane, that's not Fox's fault. As for sex and gender being 2 different things, I totally agree. Sex refers to biology, while gender is a linguistic term that refers to words, but was co-opted by a pedophile sexologist named John Money and applied to people in a vague and ambiguous way. Dave never mentions that point. He doesn't seem to know where his own ideas came from, or else he doesn't want you to know. Ignorant or deceptive, you decide. From here, Professor Dave provides a basically correct definition of sex with a long digression into intersexuality, and then gets around to talking about gender. Let's listen to that.
Gender is a different phenomenon. It is still biological, but it is a neurochemical construct. This means that ultimately it is still genetic in basis, but it absolutely is not determined merely by the sex chromosomes. It is tremendously more complicated, and researchers are still working to understand the biological basis of gender identity. Human psychology is complex. People need to deal with that. Thoughts and feelings are ultimately chemical phenomena. We all have a neurochemical profile that guides how we think and feel, and part of that is gender identity. The reason that we are just now becoming equipped to differentiate between the 2 phenomena is that in the vast majority of humans, somewhere between 99 and 99.9% of all people, gender identity aligns with biological sex.
So gender identity has a neurochemical basis because it's a feeling, and feelings can be traced back to brain activity. Okay, sure, I'll buy that. The question is whether those feelings reflect reality. That's the question. An anorexic person feels that she's overweight. The feeling is a biological phenomenon in the sense that it's happening in her brain in the same sense that a man feels like a woman. But we understand in her case that the feelings are disordered, incorrect, wrong, delusional, and so we work to treat her brain, her feelings, to more accurately align them with reality. We don't say that the anorexic is trans obese, and we don't call actually obese people cis obese. We understand that there's physical reality and then feelings, and sometimes feelings are out of step with reality, and when that's the case, we usually understand that the feelings are the issue, they are the problem to be solved, and so we try to solve them.
My thing is this: why confuse a group of people, a huge group of people, with all of these intricacies that could make solving this issue more difficult? Is what they're doing. So you have a bunch of people who are leading with their hearts and their feelings, and they want to believe something other than what's already out there, which is reality. They want to believe something outside of reality. So the best thing to do is present them with something extremely complicated that supports their theory. That way they can say that the people on the other side are too dumb to understand what they're going through. So the people who are leading with their emotions and their emotions and their feelings, then in their minds, they come out to be the intellectuals. They come out to be the ones who are correct. They come out to be the ones who are not being erotic. It's everyone else. It's everyone else. So now when you ask them a question as simple as what is a woman, they're looking at you like, you clearly have not been to Professor Dave's class, because he breaks it down perfectly. And since you're too dumb and bigoted to understand that, you'll continue with your idiotic questions about truth and reality and what a woman is.
Will Professor Dave address that objection in this video? Spoiler, no, he won't. In fact, he won't honestly engage with literally any objection raised by the opponents of his ideology at all. Won't even try. Common theme with these people.
Yeah, so what's the difference between him and other professors that Matt Walsh actually interviewed in the video? I mean, in the documentary. It was a whole bunch of extremely smart people with plaques on their walls and degrees and all this other stuff. But then when they was asked certain things, and they even had one dude who was a senator or a congressperson or something like that. And this dude ended the daggone, and I don't know if they were of the trans community, but after one question, they ended the entire interview.
But let's keep listening anyway.
The unfortunate linguistic coincidence is that we use terms like man and woman or male and female in describing both of these phenomena. That is where the confusion arises.
How's that confusion, bro? How is that confusion? What? How? Okay.
In describing both of these phenomena. That is where the confusion arises, when people insist that one term must encapsulate both phenomena at once. So when someone asks, what is a woman, expecting to get a very simple answer that children can understand, they are sorely mistaken. The answer requires a discussion of genetics and neurochemistry.
Well, I'm sorry you find it offensive, Dave, but yes, I do deny the concept of gender as it was conceived by John Money. You accept that concept as gospel. You're offended that anybody disagrees with it. That's your problem. Meanwhile, you say that the definition of the word woman is complicated, but please note that it's complicated is not a definition. So you still haven't defined it. I never insisted on a simple definition. I simply insist on a definition, any kind of definition,
some
sort of meaning.
That's it.
You can give me a complicated one. That's fine. Go ahead, try me. Give me a complicated definition. I'm perfectly fine with that. But you must have some definition, whereas you provide none at all.
What he's trying to do is act as if it's one of those things like it's all these different molecules and atoms and that we haven't figured out yet. This is extremely complicated. We're in the lab trying to understand it right now, and a whole bunch of money going into it. We got the best people working on it right now. We take your question extremely seriously. The thing is, it's way too complicated to give you an answer. Or as he said, give an answer that children would understand. Matt Walsh is not a child. He's a man who was asking a question to other adults. There was no children in the room. And again, why are we bringing children into the conversation again? Children always come into the conversation when we're talking about this. And this is unfortunate too, because that's why all this perversity is being brought into the fold.
But you must have some definition, whereas you provide none at all. See, this is a major problem for you, Dave, and let me try to explain why. It's a problem because, and listen closely, you are using the word. Do you see why that's an issue?
Yep.
You say the word woman is complicated and apparently ambiguous and hard to understand, yet you use it.
Yep.
You refer to women. You talk about women. I bet you'd even say that you believe in women's rights. Would you say that? I bet you would. This must mean that you have some solid, comprehensible idea of what a woman is, yet you never explain that idea.
Yep. And when they have to actually explain it, they have way too many friends, powerful friends, people who are lining their pockets very nicely, very beautifully. And if they answer it properly, like Matt just now said, they could be canceled. And they're not about that life at all.
That's a very big problem for you, Dave. You're using a word that you cannot or will not define, which means either that you're hopelessly confused and we should dismiss you and your arguments for that reason, or you're evasive and disingenuous and we should dismiss you and your arguments for that reason. Either way, you and your arguments are in really bad shape right now. Let's continue.
The acceptance for suppressed sexual orientations came first because around 10% of people are gay, whereas a much smaller percentage of people are trans. But this is the natural progression of societal evolution. Nearly every binary has been shown to actually be a spectrum, and it doesn't matter how uncomfortable it makes conservative people.
Wait, what? Nearly every binary is a spectrum? Like what? No, I'm not uncomfortable with that. I just think it's nonsense. I mean, in a certain way, I'm uncomfortable around people saying stupid things, but that's all we mean by that. What are the binaries that turned out to be spectrums? Don't say gender, because that's begging the question. I don't agree with John Money's concept of gender at all. It's not that I think gender is a binary. It's that I think it's a totally useless and incoherent concept that should be put back into the world of linguistics and grammar where it belongs. As for sex, if that's not a binary, then what is it? There are males and females. There are those who are of the nature to become pregnant and those who are of the nature to impregnate.
Yep. It's that simple, Jack. It's that daggone simple. Oh, see, there y'all go again, explaining to me stuff that I already know. I'm trying to change the narrative because I got a new group of people who are paying me to support their theory. So shh, be quiet. They'll have this argument all day. You know what? People who don't have a definition for anything can argue forever. Why? Because they've never accepted anything. And yeah, he's right. He keeps on using the word woman. And by him using the word woman, he knows exactly who he's talking about. But he don't have a definition for it. And he's a professor. That's BS. That's absolute BS.
Those who are of the nature to become pregnant and those who are of the nature to impregnate. There's no third sex, it's a binary. So where is the spectrum that everyone thought was a binary? Can you give one example? As for the claim that 10% of people are gay, where did you come up with that? Where'd you get that from? Well, I'll tell you where you got it from. You got that from Alfred Kinsey, who made that claim in his book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, which is the same book that contains a chart documenting the orgasms of infants. He arrives at...
See, that's that BS right there. The orgasms of infants, that guy right there, he got it from the book of the pervert.
Human Male, which is the same book that contains a chart documenting the orgasms of infants. He arrives at his arguments and his figures about human sexuality by interviewing sex offenders and prison inmates and lying and pretending that he surveyed a cross-section of the population, but he didn't. So that's where you're getting your information, Professor. I just thought you might like to know that. Let's watch a little bit more.
Now, as promised, with the indictment of conservatives complete, I turn to liberals and the missteps they are enacting that are preventing resolution. Number one, please stop saying things like gender is a social construct. No, it is not. It is a biological construct. Society can't turn you trans any more than it can turn you gay. Gender is determined biologically.
Yes, it can. Society can definitely turn you trans. Society definitely can and has turned people gay. Society plays a huge part on everything that's going on. And if anyone says that, he called him the correct word. The correct word is disingenuous. He's extremely disingenuous. Extremely, man, because this is ridiculous. He know that. Come on, man. Come on, man. Now, there are people out there who are born feeling like they do not belong in that body. They belong to the opposite sex. There are people out there, but there are also people out there who look at a certain lifestyle and want to be a part of it. They feel like they're not, they don't belong to one group or the other, so they pick their group. There are people out there who are watching these TikToks of people who are just, I guess, gaining a fan base based off of their sexuality or lack thereof, their confusion, and they want to be a part of it at extremely early ages and at late stages of their lives. So to say that this is not a social issue as well, come on, man, that's complete BS.
His indictment of conservatives was complete without ever approaching the vicinity of any one of our actual arguments, and then he turns to criticize liberals to prove how fair and objective he is by slamming them for not being liberal enough. He also says that society can't turn you trans, totally ignoring the fact that in our society currently, and only in our society, only in the West, there has been a many-fold increase in trans identification. If that's not society turning people trans, what is it, Dave?
Boom. Boom, bro.
Dave? Now, I don't know what you'd say to that, because as always, and like literally every other gender ideologue I've ever spoken to, and I guarantee I've spoken personally to many more people on your side than you've spoken to on my side, but like all of them, you don't attempt to grapple with any of the logical inconsistencies of your position. But I ask again anyway, if society can't turn you trans, why are we experiencing an unprecedented skyrocketing rise in trans identifications? If you say that there have always been this many trans people, but they were all in the closet, you'll then have to explain why there was never, ever, at any point, ever, a mass epidemic of people committing suicide because they were not affirmed in their gender identity. After all, a staple doctrine on the left is that lack of affirmation is dangerous because it causes suicide. Well, then why was that never happening back when there were millions and millions of supposed unaffirmed trans people? Indeed, why is the suicide epidemic happening now when trans people are so affirmed?
It's because they're out the closet now. And when they come out the closet and then people see them and now they know the secret, then they have to do something.
Here's my answer. Gender ideology is a modern Western social construct that didn't exist until it was invented by psychoanalytical quacks and then parroted mindlessly by people like you. Further, while pretending that it affirms and nurtures people, it actually leads them into self-destruction and despair. The evidence bears that out. The evidence is entirely on my side, in fact, and not at all on your side, because on this topic you are wrong about nearly everything, and your underlying claims are so nonsensical and incoherent that you can't begin to explain them or defend them, and that's why you don't even try. Which is a long way of saying, Professor Dave, that you are today canceled.
He said that's a long way of saying that you are today canceled. So what y'all got to say about this? It's your turn. Sound off in the comments below, and if you have yet to hit that subscribe button, please make sure you do so on your way out the door. Once again, guys, I'm Van, and now we are all the LFR family, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video, hopefully inside the Patreon as well. Keep doing your thing. Keep doing your thing. As long as there's love in your heart and you're leading with the love of God, you're straight. Not straight as in straight or gay. I'm just talking about you're good. All right? If you're not doing it to try to demean anybody, put anyone down, embarrass, or push someone to anger, and you just want to educate and you want to make let people know that you know, some things need to be fixed, some things need to be handled. Continue to do your thing, man. But yeah, let me know whatever y'all want me to know in the comments below. And if you have yet to hit that subscribe button, hit that thing, man. Look forward to seeing y'all in the next video and everything. Love y'all.